allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please. Councilmember Conley?
Present.
Councilmember Losi?
Here.
Councilmember Mobley?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Here.
Mayor Trent?
Here. Okay, our first item is a proclamation, and it just went away on my iPad here. Fortuna Library Day. Whereas the library provides informational services to all members of our community, and whereas the library promotes literacy and encourages reading among young people, and whereas in the world undergoing constant changes, libraries provide enduring connections to the past and the future of our community, nation, and civilization. And whereas libraries promote unrestricted access to information, provide entry into important research, and serve as a community center for lifelong learning. And whereas the Fortuna City Council supports the Friends of the Library in providing young people access to more books. Now therefore, I, Tammy Trent, Mayor of the City of Fortuna, do hereby proclaim March 11th, 2020 as Fortuna Library Day, and urge everyone to pay special tribute to the contributions the library in our community by supporting Library Day and visiting the library. And Sandy will be accepting this.
I do. On behalf of the Friends of the Fortuna Library, I'd like to thank the City of Fortuna for this proclamation and also for all of the assistance that they provide to our small library. I say small, but that's only the size of the building. Fortuna is very lucky to have one of the best libraries in Humboldt County. This year marks the 67th year since the library opened its doors. There have been a lot of changes since that time. The Friends of Fortuna Library are proud to have provided funding to enable many programs that have been added, such as story time in both English and Spanish, extended play after story time, Lego and building clubs, family board game nights, and lots of summer programs, just to name a few. As mentioned, the Friends of the Fortuna Library's main fundraiser is our book sale, which will be on Saturday from 10 to 7. And we'll also be having a chicken dinner that is on a takeout basis, a cost of $25. And of course, this also gives you membership in the library. So once again, thank you all very much for your support. And I have a little gift for you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you. Next, we have a Measure E report presented by the Measure E Chair, Joseph Hardcastle.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. This is a little later than usual, this report, because it was put off, as you guys probably know. There was a little bit of work to do around town after the earthquake, so this is a little late for a last fiscal year report, but here it is. All of the positions on the E-Committee are filled and have a couple of positions have rolled over to new people, but those are filled as well, so we're fully staffed, including the former Mayor Sue, which we are really happy to have. That's really a wonderful addition. All of the staff positions that are funded by Measure E are also full. Those include the 2 detective positions, 1 community services officer, a code compliance officer, the Parks and Rec director, and 1 recreation program supervisor. So that's the summation. And then I'm going to refer to the handout that you all have in your packet, but I'm not going to go over it step by step because I'm a lumper, not a splitter. And if you have questions, and I'm happy to answer them to the best of my knowledge. Pardon me? I thought somebody said something. Okay, so if you look on page 5, you'll see the pie diagram. And that was not how the money was originally allocated. So there are some changes in that. And I'll talk about a couple of them. I'm not going to go through all of it like you said. But basically, last year's budget flexed some due to some projects that were not able to be done on time so that some of that money rolled over. So a little was unspent and went back to the tune of $144,000 into the general fund, which can roll over depending on the kind of project, as I know Merritt and the council have worked out. So the slices of the pie are a little different than in the past. But in spite of all that, the Parks and Recreation program got more money this year than is typical. But in general, the last few years, Public Works has had a bigger slice. But they've gone through, as you know, the Hillside Creek project was taking $250,000 a year of money to make that happen for 3 years. So now it was sort of Parks' turn for a little bit, and they've got some money for like the 8.4 acre parcel addition to Newburgh Park. So things are happening, and they're good things. But it did involve some flexing, which the council is aware of because you let it happen. So one of the things that I would like to point out that I think is a wonderful project that was funded by that the Public Works Department is doing is the Stormwater Infrastructure Hazard Identification Project, which is to just have a study that itemizes exactly which underground culverts, et cetera, are in trouble, so that in the future, the city will be able to go after grant money. And that's where Measure E typically has come in so well in the past. Like I mentioned, the grant funds required for the Hillside Creek flooding project. Well, that's where we hope Measure E you guys can get the grant with this kind of background, the proactive spending to be able to get a lot of money, possibly once you've got the actual dollars and can back up the grants. In addition, they also did the street maintenance projects to the tune of $140,000 of E-money on Ronerville Road and Kenwood. No storm drain projects in that fiscal year. Hard to believe, but it was so dry, there weren't any culvert collapses. Not to say we couldn't have a whole bunch this year, although Merritt told me there haven't been any so far. We'll see. We've been lucky. There have been no major, deluges, but you never know, and those jobs still need done. Of course, the illegal camp cleanup has been a wonderful thing that's been able to go on with the River Life Foundation for a few years now. Going to Parks and Recreation expenditures on page 6. I'll skip that first. I'm going to 7. One major improvement that is really good is Parks asked for a very small amount of money to buy equipment, $1,500 was what was spent for a new net system, freestanding net system and volleyballs for the pavilion. And there's a new volleyball program going, a drop-in volleyball that's been well attended. So that's really a good program to give the folks in town an opportunity to do things. Another project that's still coming, and one of those that why money it flexes from year to year, is the Roner Park basketball court rehab and expansion. That one going to 2 courts, which you heard this from the Public Works presentation earlier, or from the Parks presentation, excuse me, will be happening this spring and/or early summer, I believe, and give 2 good, well-protected volleyball courts. And there were a lot of Parks improvements, the rubber chips in the park that can make hazardous dust were changed out to appropriate wood chips, back to that. But they have to be a certain kind, and just the right amount of, playground fibers, they call them, and they have to be the right size and sponginess. So it wasn't an inexpensive thing, but it was a great job. Another part of the summary here is Chief Day gave a wonderful presentation to you recently regarding the police detectives. So I'm going to skip that, but they do an amazing job, as we know. Same is true for the community services officer, the code compliance officer, and our wonderful canine program, which we love, which the training and acquisition of the dogs have been partially, well, not the acquisition, but the training and a bunch of the canine expenses allowing us to have 2 dogs has been covered by Measure E, as you know. Another real big deal for the police department, which seems like not a big deal, but it is the mobile data terminals in the vehicles, replacing them and giving officers in the field such good communication capabilities is actually a very amazing improvement, and that was done in that fiscal year. The final page would be on page 10, and this is where I'll philosophize a little bit, but I'll read part of the presentation that was that is in writing for you, because some of the public if they're listening on Zoom, may not hear this. There are several points the committee wants to be sure the council pays attention to ongoing. The Measure E fund support for streets, we're hoping will rise in future years, as I discussed peripherally. The police department positions and the 4 park positions have secure funding, barring huge changes in how we allocate things, and the committee has just said we're going to go on with that. And the committee is dedicated to upping the reserves for the city, which if the current economic forecast for a possible recession happens is going to be critically important. I just heard Mount Measure Z hasn't been impacted by the projections on that, and I'm sure that will trickle down to Measure E as well at our upcoming meeting. So I'm just trying to look here real quick, but okay, so just not reading it all, but in conclusion that the Measure E provides basically the same amount of money as the general sales tax for the city, which is a really good chunk of money, but it's not, not enough to do everything. And we try real hard to make sure that in coordination with the various departments in the staff presentations and Aaron and Merritt, to make sure that everything is allocated in ways that really make sense given the limited amount of money there is. And it's my opinion that the city staff has done an amazing job. The council has done an amazing job working with our recommendations, and of course the committee members all believe in what they're doing, and they have worked hard to try to make things happen. And even with the Measure E committee money being there, with being quite lean for what we would all like to see done. Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
Thank you for your report.
You're so welcome.
Also, I just wanted to say thank you for our taxpayer, our community who voted this in. That's a lot of things we would not have if we didn't have that tax
yes.
measure.
Yes.
And thank you for the committee for all the hours of work you put into it. It's very
Thank you.
appreciated.
And 2 other of the members are here, not besides me and Sue Wilson, of course, you all know, but so 3/7 of us are here tonight. Thank you. I'll pass that on.
Thank you for providing the oversight that helps the public be sure that the money is being used in the manner for which we got the ballot measure done, and we thank you for that and thank the public for putting it in place.
There's a lot of help from Aaron with that.
there is Joe. Joe, I also wanted to thank you and the committee. I was on the committee from the beginning, and I really appreciate the work that that everyone puts into it, and especially those of you who have been on it for so many years, and the new people. It's a lot of work, a lot of juggling on how you're going to make everybody happy, and it is appreciated.
Our next item is oral comments from the public. Anybody who'd like to speak on anything that's not on the agenda?
Can I remove this from?
Mhm.
I don't want to get them too close if my attention's divided. So, Sydney. I'd like to thank the council for hearing me tonight. I'm here to voice my concern for Assembly Bill 742, which is a bill for limited use of canines in law enforcement, specifically eliminating the use of a canine in apprehension and arrest and crowd control. The bill was put forth several weeks ago, and it's caused quite a stir in the canine community, as well as it should be causing concern for the city government. And I appreciate that the council would take a stance on the Assembly bill, and that recognizing how important that aspect of law enforcement is. My time in law enforcement, I've seen tools taken out of our hands, and almost to the point where they're limiting us to very few choices, but then complaining about the choices we have to make. The canine is a tool in law enforcement's belt that it's got quite a history, but that history is being mixed with current hot button issues that are not part of what a canine and a well-trained canine unit is able to do. They have various statistics that will tell you what they want you to see, but if you do a very simple research on the internet, you can find that there is no discrepancy between the use of a canine across the board between any type of race, be it white, black, Hispanic. It makes no difference. The percentages are very close, within 10% across the board. The canine, the intangible part of a canine unit is the amount of time that force didn't have to be used. And one of the other hot button subjects that's talked about in the legislature is de-escalation. And just the presence of a dog on scene de-escalates, because people tend to make better decisions. You'll never be able to quantify the amount of times that force wasn't used specifically because a canine was on scene. And that's something that the sensational language in the bill doesn't represent. So I appreciate the council's consideration for your stance on AB 742. And if anybody has any questions about the canine program, canine's abilities, our training, I'm available to answer any questions for anybody. You can contact me at the police department, Officer D. Stevens. You can email me through the city, and I'd be more than happy to talk to anybody, the citizens, the council, anybody that wants to talk about it. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak on anything?
Never pass up the opportunity. This canine thing is disturbing to me. And I'm wondering, is there anything that the average person out here can do to shoot that down? I don't know how to go about attacking that bill, because it needs to be killed.
We actually have a letter of opposition that I just signed and gave back over there that we'll be voting on in our consent calendar tonight. So we are sending in a letter of opposition.
Is there a letter being formed for those of us out here to sign?
That
We could certainly give you a copy of the city's letter that you could adapt to an individual.
Okay,
Yeah.
great, thank you.
Contacting your state assembly or Senate representative directly by email, telephone, or letter would be one of the best ways. Let them know your feelings directly. Yeah, and that's for anybody out there. Exactly, exactly, yeah.
All right, thanks, Mark.
Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Okay, we go to our consent calendar. We have 8 items on our consent calendar. City Council minutes, report of disbursements, resolution of the City Council of the City of Fortuna opposing California Assembly Bill 742, that's the one we just talked about. Consideration of adoption of the Fortuna Business Improvement District Advisory Committee member. Supplemental budget request for $20,000 to the Building Division's Engineer Service account for earthquake-related expenses. Adopt resolution appointing police chief, city manager to make determinations for the public. This word's all blurred.
Convenience.
Convenience of necessity for certain ABC license within the city. Business loan for Eric Allen for 1434 Ronaville Road. Lease agreement between the City of Fortuna and Humboldt County for the library building. Anybody like to pull any of those?
Yes.
Okay,
I would like G,
G.
please.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, I want to pull C, D, and G. The first one being G, Chief was going to talk about that a minute, and then I'll let you ask any questions that you had on that.
Thank you, Mayor Trent, Honorable City Council. Yeah, it is, actually, I had Dennis do my staff report for me, so this should be easy. I'm proud to bring Resolution 2023-06 to the council this evening, which is a resolution that is publicly opposing California Assembly Bill 742. And 742 is new proposed legislation. It was proposed in February. And essentially what the bill aims to do is limit the use of police canines for official purposes, and those purposes are specific to the use of non-lethal force. So any type of crowd control or deployment for apprehension or use of force, this assembly bill, if passed, would remove that capability from California law enforcement organizations. So among other things, the resolution that's before the council tonight identifies this attempt by the legislation at irresponsible, counterproductive, and unnecessary rules guiding the use of force. It was kind of hit on earlier, and I'm just going to make a couple of remarks that, you know, there is an invaluable presence to the dog in incidences that, you know, would typically go the wrong way and require an officer to use his hands or feet or other force options to subdue a violently resisting subject and or restore peace to a situation where force is necessary. Now, force never looks good, and de-escalation and, you know, our ability to talk people into doing the right thing or to avoid a confrontation is always our main priority and our main purposes. But even though the uses of force don't look good, sometimes it's absolutely what's required. And so these dogs give us that opportunity to not only de-escalate the situation, but to have a tangible form of non-lethal force which can safely help us take a violently resisting criminal into custody and reduce safety issues to our personnel. The dogs and the job that these dogs do, they provide a level of protection to their human counterparts that we can't replicate in any other way. So again, that's what the resolution is tonight before you, is to publicly oppose this legislation and keep these tools available to our law enforcement officers that are doing a very tough job out in the community. And so with that, I would submit the resolution and staff report, and I can answer any questions that you may have.
Does anybody have any questions on that? No, thank you very much, Chief.
Pleasure.
Mike, you want to go ahead with?
With G?
Yes.
Excuse me, sure. This is the business loan of $25,000 to Eric Allen for the property at 1434 Ronerville Road. Just to give you some reference, in the late 60s, early 70s, that it's kind of called a block in there, but there had been a neighborhood grocery store in there at one point. More recently, you might recognize the name of the Sow's Ear, and that was there for a number of years as that business. Now, I'm absolutely in favor of this loan. I think that any attempt at rehabilitating those buildings in there is on the right track. It's a positive move. I don't know how much rehabilitation $25,000 is going to make there, but so I really would like to see that happen. But I do believe that the city of Fortuna, we have to protect the public money. And with regard to this loan, I think we either need a first or second deed of trust on that property. If there's not a first, then we need to be first in first position. And if there is a first, then we need at least a second on possession. That's my suggestion.
Yeah, and if I can just weigh in, this loan came in, and I apologize, it's been some time. The council initially approved this. It came in the middle of COVID. So when it first came to the city, we were looking at doing one of the COVID business loan funds. We knew we were going to see some money from the federal government. We really just wanted to keep businesses going. It took a lot of time to get back around to to this item. That's why I put it back on the agenda. But I think at this point, with COVID being gone and that business loan program really not being administered by REDEC, that it would be better to do more of a traditional loan. And so in the staff report, it proposed 30-year terms. And I think if acceptable, we could do a promissory note and a deed of trust and just do it through a title company, more like a standard lending agreement. And Eric Allen's here, who owns the property. He's been very patient with the city thus far, and I know he contacted some council members. So if you have any questions about the project or what Mr. Allen wants to do, he did share with me that he was pursuing some funding to work on foundations, and that this loan, his primary intent was to put more improvements into the building, such as roofing improvements. So if you have any questions about what Mr. Allen wants to do, you could ask him, but otherwise we're going to a more of a traditional lending situation where we'd use the city business loan funds that are intended to loan to businesses located within the city.
Good. I do commend you for taking the steps to rehabilitate that building. It badly needs it. I hope you understand we do need to protect the public money and have that lien of somewhere along the line then.
And the recommendation is to authorize the city manager to negotiate the terms, and so I would plan on incorporating that in there. So I don't think we have to change the motion with the item. I think it's covered in there.
Okay. Yeah, with the provision that there would be that promissory note lien on that. Yeah. Okay.
I also pulled that one, and that was one of my concerns too, is I think the city does need to be protected. And then I kind of look at this almost like what the redevelopment loans used to be, which I actually had one of those. And in the redevelopment loan, there was a section in there that actually made sure that you were using the loan for the project. So I would like to see something in there, like maybe, when they get the contractor or whatever, whoever's going to do it, have some sort of information that says this is how much it's going to cost, and then the loan's given otherwise people could get this loan and there's no way to make them actually spend it on the project.
And I think I could probably work with Mr. Allen. I know his intention is to fix up the building. He's already invested a lot of money himself, and I think we could probably find a way prior to, closing the loan to just make sure that he's contracted and has a plan for those repairs and that he's committed to that. And so I don't have any proposed wording right now, but I think I could work with Mr. Allen and make sure there's some certainty that that money is going to go into the building, and that's the intention.
Okay, thank you. And then I also pulled the consideration for appointment for the measure or the Business Improvement District. And I just wanted to say that, let's see, where is it here? That Stephanie McGrath from Grocery Outlet has applied for that, and I think she'll make a very good asset. So I just wanted the council to know that I recommend her for that position, and I think she'll do a good job. And thank you for all the people who've stepped up for that committee. We have a lot of good volunteers here for our committee. And see, with that, then we'll go ahead and make a motion for the consent calendar.
I'll move to approve the consent calendar with the changes as described for item G, the business loan to Eric Allen for 1434 Runnerville Road.
A second.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Okay, moving on to our first line of business, which would be oh, yeah, you can, go ahead. You need to step up to the mic.
I wanted to thank Honorable Mayor and Council and City staff for your time. I was just curious, is there a timeline I can expect for that? Because I was here 2 years ago and got approved, and since then, some inflation has taken its toll on that money, and I'm just wondering when I can expect that to come through.
That would be.
Yeah, I think we could wrap it up within the next 4 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, our first item of business is to authorize the city manager to award the water tank recoding project CP 0925 to Simpson Sandblasting and Coating, and establish a maximum contract of $955,000 and approve a supplementary budget request for $780,000. We have a staff report.
So the Hillside, that's a 250,000 gallon tank, and the 1 million gallon Campton Heights tanks were constructed in 1989 and 1990 respectively. These tanks are made of steel, and they require a protective coating to stop corrosion and prolong the tank's life. The original coatings are still on there, and that was recognized back in the early 2010s when it was added to the 5-year capital improvement plan. And subsequently, over that time, the coating, they realized that the coating had to either be rehabilitated or replaced. And in 2018, the city had a full inspection done on the tanks. The exteriors were found to be failing a little bit, more on the roofs of it, which is really an essential part to be protected. They did find, however, that the interiors of the tank were in reasonable condition and didn't recommend rehabilitation at that time. So over the next few years, the project was developed, and in 2022, as it was getting wrapped up, the city had the tank's interiors inspected again. And with this inspection, it was found that the interior of the tanks were beginning to show some failure. So the city's consulting engineers, GHD, recommended that we include the interiors on this project. That recommendation was not considered when this project was budgeted in the 2022-2023 fiscal budget and capital improvement program plan. The current project as it is bid will include stripping the entire interior of the tank to bare metal, including the exterior roof, and the interior or the exterior walls will be prepped, washed, etched, and prepared for coating as well. And the entirety of the tanks inside and out will be coated. And it's a multi-layer process that will take a bit of time. Let's see. The other part of that is that they will have to gather up the material that is sandblasted off and remove it from the project site. So these tanks are very large, and it's a great deal of work, not only to do the outside, but the inside has very limited accessibility. And as you can see, that's an example of when we did the digester project of the scaffolding that has to be put inside to do the work. The bid package was released publicly and advertised December 12th, 2022, and the bid period ended on January 25th, 2023 at 2 p.m. There were 4 responsive bids at that time. The apparent low bidder was Simpson Sandblasting and Coating at $887,000 on up to the highest bid, which was just over $1 million. The low bid, $887,000 breakdown can be found as attachment B in the package, as well as the other bids breakdowns. Staff found that the bid was fully responsive and that Simpson Sandblasting and Coating had active license and registrations. And the city's consultants also confirmed that the prices that we got were consistent with those seen around the state, especially when people need to come from other areas, mobilize their crew. And so staff recommends awarding the contract to Simpson Sandblasting and Coating. As noted before, the recommendation to do the interior came after the budget was set at $300,000 for this project. And for just the exterior, that would have been a reasonable bid or reasonable estimate on that project. The extra work required to get inside the confined space, and there's also an issue of environmental controls where humidity has to be regulated, so it becomes a much more complicated project because of doing the interior. However, these are very important parts of our city's water distribution infrastructure, and since they will be down and evacuated, it only makes sense to do it all in one fell swoop. With this, we are proposing a supplemental budget request that is attachment C, and if the project is awarded we anticipate being under contract in March, and mobilize and construction is anticipated to begin sometime in the spring. If things go well, we hope that they will finish this before the fiscal year ends, and we won't have to budget for the remainder of the project into next year. However, the staff is prepared if it does go into the next year, to come up with a budget plan for that. The fiscal impact, this will be funded through the city's Water Capital Reserve Funds, Fund 510. And as noted, fiscal year 2022-23 only allocated $300,000 for this project. A breakdown of the costs justifying the supplemental budget request includes the $887,000 for the contract, an approximate 10% contingency, as well as a $129,000 contract that was previously awarded to our professional engineers advising us. Staff is requesting that council authorize a supplemental budget request for $783,000. And that the recommendation that the city authorize the city manager to award the water tank recoating project CIP 0925 to Simpson Sandblasting and Coating to establish a maximum contract amount of $955,000 and approve a supplemental budget request for $783,000.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
I do have some questions. How large are those two tanks that we're talking about?
Volumetrically, $250,000, the hillside is $250,000, and Campton tank is 1 million gallons.
Okay. What kind of coating are they going to use?
It's a marine coating.
Inside and outside?
Inside and out, yeah.
How long is it expected to last?
Well, 1990 to 2020, it was acknowledged in 2010 that we were looking at maybe some external failures, so 20, 30 years it looks like.
Okay, products are different now. So in the bid that they gave you, I'm sure that they gave you, or we called out a specific product to use. So
our consulting engineers, Gaia, I believe, it was retained by GHD, and they deal with this specifically, and so they're the ones that
So we're thinking 30 years. And is it better to do it all at one time, just to prevent mobilization fees?
So because of the fact that there is some failure being noticed on the inside, perhaps it could go longer, but when we do the outside, we have to take the tanks offline, set up supplementary tanks, because we can't remove these from our distribution system without impact. So as long as it's going to be down and they're going to be emptied anyway, it seems to make sense to handle it all.
How long are we thinking that it's going to take them to do one tank? Because I'm assuming they're going to do one tank and then put that back into service and take the other one out of service?
Yes, that is true. They have a total time of, I think, 60 days on that.
I believe we're hoping for 90 calendar days, so somewhere in and around 3 months between full mobilization and then being completed with the project.
And that'll do both tanks?
That will do both tanks. And to your point, we'll have them do one after the other. They are in kind of what we would maybe consider neighboring or sistering pressure zones where one can back up the other. So, while one tank is being taken offline, some of the demand burden will be put on the other pressure system, so it will be done in series.
How will it affect our customers, our clients?
We don't anticipate that it will. Our public works staff, very talented, will be setting up, it's 4,000 or 5,000 gallon tanks on the smaller hillside tank, and they'll be piping that in. And they'll be pumped full, and they'll be supplying that pressure zone.
Okay.
Then those tanks will be brought up to the Campton where there's already 4 other tanks, because it's a much larger tank, and they go through, that tank's roughly 500,000 gallons a day is utilized out of it. So we don't anticipate any impact on the customers.
Okay, perfect. One last question. What will our balance be in that fund if we take that much additional?
Yeah, we have roughly $10 million in there, and so this is about $1 million. I think the SBR is 783, so there's plenty of money in there. And really, that's what this type of project is what the money's intended for. So it's taken a while to get up there. Actually, we were surprised because the tanks it was a couple years ago where we had an inspection. We were really surprised the interior of those tanks didn't need to get the corrosion then, but the cathodic protection that is in place is protecting those. So they put a current in to donate the electron instead of the coating going. And I think that Brennan and Matt have done a good job of making sure we're working with corrosion experts. We're not corrosion experts, and so the challenge for city staff is working to make sure we get the right people to spec those coating systems. And they're really temperamental projects. During construction, they're subject to the atmosphere, and you really have to monitor the conditions and get the right people there to do the inspections. Otherwise, you can have coating failure in a real short period of time. And so I think the next key for us, other than getting the right spec and design, is making sure that we have proper inspection. So and this is not the kind of project you want to redo with frequency. Even though it won't disrupt the customers, it's a lot of work for our public works crews, and having those tanks offline always makes us nervous if there's some event that demands a lot of water. So we have a lot of capacity with our pumps, so we can keep up, as we did when, this isn't a new thing for the city. We did the Stewart Reservoir not too long ago, and a few years before that, we had done the Vansel Reservoir, and we've used a similar temporary tank system to keep those pressure zones going, and we have the pumping capacity to be able to refill those. So, I think this is well thought out. Our public works team has done a good job, and so I'm very comfortable proceeding. This is something that we have institutional memory on our utility crews. They know how to hook these things up and do them, but the question is just running through all those scenarios of what could happen and how are we going to handle that. And I know that Brendan and Matt are working on that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your information. And you answered my questions. Thank you.
Just got one, because you asked and answered all the questions that I had, but except for, while this is being down, are we going to renew the cathodic protection and make sure that's all up to snuff at the same time while it's down?
Yes, we will.
I mean, you don't get the opportunity like this very often, so.
Right, you should see the cathodes.
I'm sure. Thank you.
I'll actually note to that, and Chris Christensen, our chief plant operator, could speak better to it, but I believe in one tank we've been working on it over the last few years, so yes.
Question. Ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
I can go?
Go.
Good job, Matt and Brendan, for presenting this project. Merritt, remind me, with GHD, we had them on retainer on an on-call basis. Did we pay them for that, and is the 128.8 over and above the retainer that we paid them?
Yeah, Brendan, so we did an on-call contract. I'll let Brendan speak to it, but, when we have other projects that we do under the on-call, we've brought those back to council for authorization, but I'll let Brendan's work on this and manage it, so I'd like Brendan to answer that.
Yeah, we ran this project through the city's on-call contract with GHD. It's a larger one, and these are the ones we tend to bring to council, even though it's part of the on-call contract. So we did request a scope of services for them to do design and inspection work for this last year. We have been using the budget that is currently available in this fiscal year budget to cover those costs. And the cost of the project that Matt presented that includes construction and contingency also includes the ongoing cost of inspection.
Okay, thank you. When you talk about inside of these things, and I'm not really sure if they grind off the covering that's there or exactly how, but and then to recoat that interior, it seems that is it can be lethal if these people don't know what the heck they're doing, and so I'm sure that their insurance carriers are all in place, and that we have added coverage as well, because these are not easy projects, and as you have denoted. So, thank you, though.
What do you guys do with the water? Does it get used and just not filled back up, like to empty them?
What was the question?
So,
Sorry.
like, to empty them, are we letting them flow to our customers and then just not filling the tank back up after we use it?
To a point. At some point, it gets low.
Levels gets too low, but not all a million gallons is just get dumped out.
A large majority of it will be delivered to the customers before we go online with the auxiliary tanks.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah. Just to answer Councilmember Losey's question, it's when they go through, they blast these, like, I can't remember if it's a bead blast or a sand blast, but there's a spec for how they take it down to the metal finish. And again, there's really stringent atmospheric monitoring conditions for these two, because you can't paint them if it's too moist. And we also, the city puts together the contract and the bonds and insurance. And so we're the ones who call those out and require them. And then the contractors are responsible for complying with our insurance requirement and our contract provisions. So we're very well protected with what we put together.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay, I'll open public comment. Anybody from the public have any questions on this project?
Hi, I'm Chris Christensen, Chief Plant Operator for the City of Fortuna. I just want to say this is a good project. It's a long time coming, and I think it's going to be a big challenge for our crew being able to maintain the system without those tanks online and with the temporary tanks online. So we'll probably ask for some conservation during that time just to make sure everyone has everything they need. So, but we'll be ready for it when it comes. Yep. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to authorize the city manager to award the water tank recoating project CIP 0925 to Simpson Sandblasting and Coating and establish a maximum contract amount of $955,000 and approve a supplemental budget request for $783,000.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Our next item of business is authorizing to award a contract for the wastewater treatment plant Proclamation Pond Rehabilitation Project 2023. And do we have a staff report for that?
Yes. Good evening, Madam Mayor and Honorable Council. Thank you for the time this evening. I'd like to shift over from the water system to the city's wastewater system now for the staff report. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, or maybe just as a general refresher, the city operates a wastewater treatment facility down on Dinsmore Drive, kind of next to the Eel River there, sandwiched in between Mercer Fraser. And depending on the time of year, there's two ways in which that we dispose of our treated effluent. So in between October 1st and May 15th, with enough flow in the river, the city is allowed to discharge treated effluent directly to surface water in the Eel River. And in between May 15th and September 30th, which is considered the summertime discharge prohibition, no users actually, or I shouldn't say users, but no municipalities that discharge treated wastewater effluent are allowed to discharge directly to surface water. So we have to find other ways in order to dispose of the effluent during those times. So on the city's property at the treatment plant in between the main facility and the river, the city operates two percolation ponds, which we discharge to during that time. They're large ponds with permeable rock bottoms. We discharge to there, the water percolates through the ground and ultimately gets down to the water table. So in order to use those ponds annually, we need to rehabilitate them, which involves removing the spent material from the year before, kind of decompacting the subgrade and getting things nice and open, and then installing new rock and making small repairs to the sidewalls and other things that can happen during the storms of the winter. So, given that we are supposed to not discharge to surface waters beginning in May 15th, we normally pull together this annual maintenance activity project sometime in the late winter, in which we did this year in January, and we bid the project. And we opened bids on February 9th, and we received 3 bids for the project, one each from Wallace Structures, from William Gray Construction, and from Wendt Construction, all local contractors here in the Fortuna area. After opening bids, we identified that the apparent low bidder was Wallace Structures with a base bid amount of $107,660. Staff did review the bids fully afterward and found Wallace Structures' bid to be fully responsive and responsible. They have all their contractors' licenses up to date, and with that, staff would recommend award of the contract to Wallace Structures. So moving over to the fiscal impact for the project. Like I had mentioned, this is an annual maintenance activity, so we do it every year, and so we budget it as a specific line item in the wastewater treatment plant division's budget. This year, we included a budget of $110,000, and as the bid came in at $107,000, we have enough budget in order to do the project with the budgeted amount in the fiscal year budget. Staff are proposing to include an approximately 5% construction contingency for this project. This is a pretty well-defined project at this point, so we tend to feel comfortable with a smaller contingency. A 5% contingency would take the contract potentially up to a not-to-exceed amount of $114,000, which is a few thousand above the budgeted amount in that line item in the budget. However, there are other general contracting budgets within the wastewater treatment plant division that we could use should we have to use that additional money. It's very uncommon in this project because it's a pretty straightforward one. So with that, I'd just like to end with my staff recommendation, which is that council authorize to award a construction contract to Wallace Structures for the amount of $107,650 and establish a maximum contract amount of $114,000. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions from council? No? Seeing none, we'll open public comment. Any comments or questions from public? Well, seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to award to Wallace Structures for $107,650, establish a maximum contract of $114,000, and authorize the city manager to execute the contract and other documents.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion passes. Moving on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor Trent. Just a few items to report tonight. First, I'd like to review the meeting schedule. We don't have any special meetings. We're still on our regular meeting schedule. Our next council meeting will be on March 20th, 6 o'clock p.m. in council chambers. Our next planning commission will be on March 14th at 6 o'clock p.m. Our next Measure E meeting will be March 21st at 5:30. And the next Roanoke Community Recreation Park District will be on April 5th. And currently the FBID meetings are being held the last Tuesday of the month, but we're trying to adjust times to see if we can get one of our members to be there. So that's subject to change. But if it continues to be the last Tuesday of the month, it'll be Tuesday, March 28th. Those are at 8:30. So they're trying to accommodate those meeting schedules so business owners can come in and then be back to work before they normally get their business going. So just a few items to report. One, I'll keep giving you some updates on the police facility until we get to the point where it's really obvious what's happening, which is in construction. But we're getting very close to breaking ground. Brendan's coordinated a pre-construction meeting for tomorrow, which is really just walking through the project and going over it with the contractor and kind of laying out the roles and responsibilities and expectations. And so after tomorrow, the contractor should be, and they probably already are, preparing submittals. But then the first action we'll see there is when they start to work on demolition, pulling down the drywall, filling in the pool, and then starting to lay out the plumbing. So we should see some activity and mobilization to the site around the middle of the month. We're still continuing to spend quite a bit of staff time between the Parks Director and myself working with the Roanoke Community Recreation and Park District. The focus now is really trying to get the pre-application and some of the financing lined up for the project, as well as get legal counsel to support the district's activities. The city attorney can't act as legal counsel for the district and the city, and so we're hoping to find somebody who can help them, advise them while they're forming the assessment benefit district and bring it out to vote to really be able to advise the district independently of the city. We're continuing to work with the developer of the mill site. We put together a draft agreement with the new property owner. The city, as the council knows, is working on a specific plan to really update the land use and zoning and help promote in order to help promote the development on that site. And there's a number of requests that the developer had to modify the city's project to accommodate what they'd like to see on the property. So we're working on a draft agreement with them to help contribute to the city's project above what we would have normally done for that project. And so I'll bring that back to council for approval in the near future. And our police department is also working with the property owner, and he's granted consent to abate, and our police department's doing routine patrols, just trying to make sure that we don't have trespassers or people lighting fires. And so they also spend a considerable amount of time cleaning up the site, clearing vegetation. And I know they have a, for lease will build this suit out there. So they seem to be really active, and they've gotten their design team together, their engineers and architects, and so they seem to be moving forward without delay. So hopefully we'll have more to report coming up on that in the near future. And I'll just say I attended the FBID meeting on February 28th. I'm really pleased with that committee. It seems like we're poised to be able to do a lot better with the money that we have for FBID and be able to enhance or expand some of the programs we have, and then also really consider which ones provide the most bang for the buck for the city. So Morgan Dodson's doing a great job too, and we expect to be able to go through that calendar in the near future and really look critically at what we've done in the past and think about what can we do better and what can we add. And then I just wanted to remind the public that they'll have a home-based business marketplace on Saturday, March 18th from 10 to 3, really hoping to highlight some of our small and home-based businesses, and that's at the River Lodge. And so folks will be able to walk through and visit a number of businesses that normally don't have that brick and mortar exposure to folks, and then also some that do. So, and I know that there's some of the businesses that are going to be giving away prizes and things to attract people down there. So look for that on March 18th at the River Lodge from 10 to 3. And that's all I have for my report.
Thank you. Do we have any future agenda items anybody would like to see brought forward? Nope. Okay, we'll move on to council reports and start with Councilman Conley.
Thank you. Had a REDEC meeting this last week. We were able to vote on 3 loans for some businesses and modify a loan, so going good. Filled your spot, Sue, on the executive committee there, so they said I should make you proud.
Councilmember Losey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There we go. Thank you. March 1st, I had a LAFCO selection committee meeting, and the committee came together with a recommendation, which we will make at the March 15th LAFCO meeting and then it's up to the commissioners at large, all the commissioners, to make a choice with the recommendation that we made, or they can that recommendation and come up with a person themselves. But I think it's a good deal that they'll come up or agree with us. And then on March 1st in the afternoon, I did attend the Runner Community Recreation and Park District meeting, and as Merritt said, they're just looking at the finance portion some more and trying to decide on an attorney that will represent the park districts. I think that's all I have.
Okay. Councilmember Mobley.
I had a Redwood Coast Energy Authority meeting that again lasted a really long time, but it was orientation. So I'm hoping that in the future that it gets a little more interesting, more things to do. I also did the FBID meeting last week, which was great. It was, I think it'll be a good committee when we all get settled in. Morgan did a great job. For you could tell it was one of her first or second time running a meeting, but she did a great job doing that. So I'm looking forward to working with her as well as the other committee members. I wanted to thank Supervisor Bushnell for all of the updates through the weather that we've experienced the last couple of weeks. It's been very important for a lot of businesses to know how they can get in and out of the county, and you've been great at updating everybody on that. Thank you. Also, Saturday is the Fortuna High Safe and Sober dinner at River Lodge. I don't know if anyone has tickets to attend, but I do encourage people to attend some of these events out there to help our youth to attend the library book sale. If you have any questions, you can contact me or anyone else on the city council to give you information on any of these upcoming items. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Well, our last HCOG meeting was prior to the last council meeting, so I already reported on that, but I do have a historical commission meeting coming up Wednesday, the 8th. For those of us on the council, there's a legislators briefing on Wednesday, the 15th, from 1:30 to 3, and register on the Cal City's website for that. Most of us have gotten an email. If you didn't see it, search in your box, because I think we each got about 3 from Bismarck Obando, Damon Conklin, and Sarah, I believe, all of them. And one last item is I have a Transportation, Communication, Public Works meeting on Friday, March 17th, the Policy Committee meeting. So that's all I have to report on now. I'll report out on those meetings later.
Thank you. Going last, a lot of the reports have already been made, so mine's nice and short. There's been 2 Measure Z, the county's tax measure meetings, and the amount to be allocated does not look good this year. It's only between $700,000 and $800,000. It's normally between $3 and $4 million. So there's going to be a lot of cuts in that one. And we have 2 asks in that, which is our drug task force officer and our school resource officer. So we're very, very hopeful that we're going to get something, but it doesn't look good for the county this year. So that's kind of sad. I'll keep you updated on that. Just say good things about us to our supervisors. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. It was nice to see almost a full house here.
Thank you. Just for